Welcome to Sunshine Cathedral's Queer God Squad. It's Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. I am Bishop Darrell Watkins, the senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral. With me today are Bishop Robert Griffin, my husband, Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell, and Reverend Kevin Tisdall. We are the Queer God Squad. Visit sunshinecathedral.org to learn more about us.
Queer God Squad was created by Hotspots Happening Out to support our mission to explore the value of faith in the LGBTQ community. There is no streaming TV show like this in the entire world.
In 2026, we are celebrating the 41st anniversary of Hotspots magazine, with Queer News Tonight sharing over 11,000 stories and 11 million views so far.
We are the largest nonprofit LGBTQ media organization in America, and we encourage you to support our mission to inform, entertain, and educate our community and allies.
This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Stars and stripes to become more propaganda than trustworthy journalism. Mother Jones reports that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has moved to restrict editorial independence of Stars and Stripes, the century-old military-funded newspaper. Traditionally protected by Congress to ensure a free press for service members, the publication now faces new oversight measures that critics label as propaganda-style control. The article details how the Pentagon is reportedly requiring journalists to submit sensitive stories for political review before publication. High-ranking officials justify the shift as a means to, quote, ensure mission alignment, end quote, during the escalation war with Iran. However, free press advocates and former editors warn that censoring the internal news of the armed services undermines troops' morale and transparency, effectively turning a trusted journalistic institution into a government-controlled communication arm. With attacks on the LGBT community, book bans, the erasure of histories, and the dismantling of DEI, this seems like one more authoritarian attempt by the administration to limit freedoms and to limit access to truth or dissent. You know, when I was on active duty, that was one of the magazines or things that I read often. It was one of the things you went to the post to get, and you caught up on some news. You know, not only news from where you were, but other things happening around the military. And after getting out of the military, it was one of those things that I continued to read because, it was considered to be one of those trustworthy sources of information because, I knew some of the people who actually wrote when I was on active duty for Snow Strike. And so it made it all the more kind of personal because you knew people, you were connected to people to give accurate information about what's actually going on in this deployment or in this situation, or in this case, or appropriation bills that were coming up to make cut funding for A, B, C, and D. And it just makes you aware of a lot of things. But now to get this story that now is going to be more controlled and sensitized and basically manipulated is what I'm just going to call it, manipulated news, it will affect the morale, I think, of the troops because they need that one source of free information that comes to them as like, this is what's really going on. And I think this will definitely hit up morale all over the globe for American troops because it's one more means of controlled communication that they feel, I believe, that we're going to be isolated from. And this is not one of those, again, this is a top-down thing, but where it was news before, there was shared common news among what's happening in the Pentagon, what's happening in the White House, what's happening militarily, what's the military strategy that's going on in some of these areas. And I think this is one of the mechanisms by which they're going to use to control or not control what is actually being communicated to military as well as to the population as a whole. I think it's a major step back.
Yeah, and they don't need it. I mean, but it shows that they're tightening control of information that's disseminated because they've got Fox News. They've got Truth Social. They've got, for real and legitimately, a press secretary and a communications director. How much control, and though it is what it is, there's not a lot of commentary or whatever, but they've got C-SPAN. They have got so many ways to get there. I don't know if the president still does a weekly radio address. The last several did, but there was that. You have so many ways of getting your message out. Now you need to take over a legitimate newspaper, not just social media, not just press conferences, but now take over. That's it's very disturbing. I mean, that's very Soviet Union. That's that's very Eastern Bloc. Now, if you're 30, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But it was bad. It was bad. And but yeah, it has that exact feel. It's disturbing.
It's controlling the narrative. It is controlling the media. It's controlling the information, the education of people. And people who don't really know what's happening are often much easier to control.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, a significant part of this.
Yeah, and I think we learned from this current president's first term, he wanted to be the commander in Twitter. Everything from him was going to be done by Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. And even now, when you do see some of the things that he is posting or supposedly he's posting, and it just becomes open mic for all the deranged comments to be out there from anybody, from A to Z, from anywhere around the world to comment on. But when you take something like this away from people, it just adds one more layer of how far are we going to continue to slip down the slippery slope that we're already on.
Yeah.
We are slipping. I mean, there's 10W30 on that pole that we're slipping down right now.
It's the luge. We are speeding down
I'm
it.
telling you, it is just another step in a terrible, in my opinion, direction. The press, if they are allowed into any Pentagon briefing, have to sign waivers saying that before I write my story, it has to be approved by the military, by the Pentagon. You've got the Federal Communications Chair threatening networks, threatening national networks, that your license may not be renewed if you don't report on the war or whatever the White House wants you to report on in a proper way. Never mind, they have no power over the national organizations, national news organizations. They have power over local organizations much more than they do national. But the whole idea of just having the threat sit there is scary. So I don't know what else we at this table can tell people about how our freedoms are being eroded, how our civil liberties are being eroded, how this thing that's called nationalism is eroding just the core of our country. And I don't believe that there's a lot of time left before we make that turn that's irreversible. Now, the United States will always exist. We will always be here. But what will we look like? A little while ago, a couple of stories ago, we talked about what Germany did after World War II. What's the United States going to do after we annex Venezuela, Syria, Iran? And I understand that Cuba is next in line.
Well, we're trying to starve them for the last 60 years anyway.
Yeah, and now they've got nothing. All right, I'm going to stop because I could go on forever. The censorship that's going on in the military is something that, as Bishop Roberts said, we've got to pay close attention to, because these are the men and women on our front. They are protecting us from craziness. And if craziness is coming from within the house.
And I guess there's nothing that prevents them from picking up the Washington Post or, whatever. But you want to read your thing's newsletter. You know what? You want to read your church's newsletter, your diocesan newsletter, your community, whatever. You want to pick it up, and you should be able to trust it.
Yeah.
One of the magazines the Navy puts out is called Shift Colors. And that's the one that I often go to because it's specifically Navy-related stuff. And I've noticed over the last several months how some of the articles in that have even begun to change, that they're not as informative as they once were. And so this just makes sense that this is a different type of a realignment for a different type of order or national order that is not American order.
And see if this sounds familiar for anything we're living through. But fascist regimes and also communist regimes, that we're way more fascist than communist because we're much more aligned with corporate stuff than but that in these authoritarian regimes, the attacks come against the academics, the attacks come against the minorities, the attacks come against the arts, and the attacks come against the press, and the attacks come against the histories.
Yes.
Of the peoples trying to rewrite history. All five of those, quite a bit between 17 and 21, and just an outrageous amount since the beginning of 25. that we are trying to erase people's histories. We're attacking minorities like trans people. We are attacking, and in some instances, taking over the media. We're attacking universities.
Yes.
It's the plan. It's the playbook.
Yep, it is.
And sadly, that's the day with the Queer God Squad.
Thank you for joining the Queer God Squad today. We are here daily at 3 p.m. to have some fun and to discuss what our LGBTQ community is talking about. Please like and share this and other episodes of the Queer God Squad.
Sunshine Cathedral is the world's leading progressive queer church. Progressive, queer, and God are words that naturally should go together. Remember that we are all in this together, and also remember that you are God's miracle, not God's mistake. Until next time, we are the Queer God Squad.